Hi everybody, this is Vicki Penwell, so I'm ready to take this webinar. I don't know, Kristen, if you want to wait a little bit longer for more people to join us. Did you hear that? All right, good evening, everyone. This is Vicki Penwell, and this is the February Mercy in Action Distance Academic Webinar. So I haven't done one of these in a few months, so it's good to be here. I see several faces which are familiar to me just on paper, so I would love it if everyone could just mute their mic and just check in. So say, hi, this is so-and-so from, tell me what state or country you're in. And then you can go ahead and mute your mic again so that we don't get a lot of background noise until you're ready to answer a question. So if everyone figured out how to mute and unmute, just your mic, not your computer, it's the little icon of the microphone, then go ahead and just start saying hi. Hey, is anybody there? Check in.
Hi, this is Kim from
Memphis, Tennessee.
Hi, this is Danielle from California.
Hi, this is Aisha from Virginia.
Hey, this is Amanda from North India.
Hi, Molly. Are you on?
Oh, I am.
Hi. Okay.
Hi. Okay.
Just checking in and go ahead and mute your mic. All right. Did we get to say hi to everyone? Okay, welcome everyone. You have two that still need to say hi, and then mute your mic, Clarissa and Molly.
Oh.
So we're just checking in and saying hi, Molly, and then go ahead and mute your mic icon again to mute it. Okay, and then Clarissa, are you there? All right, I see you just disappeared, or maybe not. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome, everybody. Yeah, I am echoing. How am I doing now? Is it better now? Somebody write and tell me if the echo's better. Okay, I think what happened was the other people's mics were on at the same time as mine. So what we'll do is we'll keep everybody muted until we're ready to answer a question. Okay, well, welcome everyone. It's great to see you, and good to hear your voices along with your names. Some of you I know and some of you I don't, but welcome. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to start with a little talk that people have asked me to do, and then we'll go to question and answers. So I see that we already have a few questions coming in on the chat over here, but we'll go ahead and go to our topic. So one of the things that a lot of people ask about, and a lot of people ask about in our assignments, which may be a little bit different than the way you're being trained in your own apprenticeships, is the whole topic of hands-off birth and what is the evidence-based research that we have on what women and babies need most at birth. So as you know, if you've been working through our modules, we're very focused on, and have been for the last 30 years, on trying to look at good science and good evidence to find the best ways to help mothers and babies through birth, and not just go on, you know, what I learned 34 years ago, or even what any popular books are saying, but really trying to look at what we can do to do this better. And one of the big topics that that scientists have been looking at is the research on how the human brain works in labor and how the human baby is set up to adapt to life outside the womb. So I want to look at a couple of those topics. And remember, when I say words like scientific or good science, that is not at all the same as medicalized childbirth. In fact, it's usually just the opposite. All the good science is pointing to that we need to do less at births instead of more. So the medical model of birth, or the technocratic model, as Robbie Davis Floyd calls it, is something in most cases is working outside of good science. It's not working within good science. So just be sure you don't get those words confused. Okay, so what we're going to look at first is hands-off birth, and this brings up so many hot button topics because midwives for at least the last 30 or more years have been really focused on having an alternative to episiotomy and having just taken a lot of pride in their profession in women not tearing at birth, and this has spawned a whole lot of behaviors that have become culture around birth that we're just going to take a step back and look at in a new light tonight. And then you can do whatever you want with this information. I realize a lot of your students, and you're working with other midwives, so they're going to have their own styles and their way of wanting you to do things. But in a nutshell, in the last, within the last 30 years or so, I've gone through a big change in my own practice of midwifery, from having been taught in the late 70s to do lots of perineal massage, perineal support, and all those kind of things, have moved away from that now to the point where we in Mercy in Action are doing completely hands-off births. And most of you know we have a very, very large database to work from. We have, this last year, we crossed the 13,000th baby line, 13,000. And we've kept detailed statistics on all those, and we continue to. So we have very, very large number of women that are delivering very, very naturally, and we're able to look at what we're doing and kind of come up with our own research. And we quit many, many years ago touching women's genitals when they were giving birth. So that's the only way I know how to put it, is we're not touching the women, but we're not touching their genitals. So when I say hands-off birth, I mean we're not touching them in their perineum or their vagina at all when they're giving birth. We are listening to heart tones. We are oftentimes holding their hands or rubbing their shoulders, but we have repositioned ourselves literally where we're not sitting in their crotch either. So we are literally standing beside them, no farther down than the level of their knee. And we are making sure they have a safe place to give birth in some sort of upright position or a side lying, and the baby can slide out into a clean, soft pad, and we're just not touching the babies. And what we're finding in our research is that we're having less tears than we've ever had before. That the thing we were trying to do to prevent tears may actually have been causing more. We don't know about that. I can't point to any other research that's showing that, but we are finding it in our own numbers. But the really significant things we're finding is that we also, I've thought about this a lot and really studied it in hundreds of births now. I think we are very, very likely disturbing, and it may be a pretty major way, maybe a very significant way, the process of birth. When we touch the perineum, when we're trying to prevent tears, we're actually preventing the baby from doing all the wiggling and turning that he needs to do to line up the shoulders. And so shoulder dystocia is something that we see very, very rarely anymore. Even tight, stuck shoulders because what I'm seeing when I'm just standing there looking over the mother's knee and watching the baby be born is that the baby is wiggling and twisting and turning all the way out. When its head is crowning, it's wiggling. When it gets its little face out, it's wiggling. When you think the shoulders are lined up, it's not finished. It still wiggles more. And this is something that Anne Fry mentioned in her last book. She's the only other author I've heard mention this, that perhaps by trying to prevent tears, we're actually causing shoulder dystocias. And now I'm quite convinced of this. So that's one exciting thing about hands-off birth, is to realize all those births, I never knew babies were wiggling that much because I had my hands on them. And another part of hands-off birth is just not talking. So you actually let the mother push the baby out with her own instincts and urges, which sounds like that makes total sense, but you think of all the years and all the books dedicated to telling midwives how to slow down births or speed them up, or tell the mothers, don't push now, breathe now. A lot of the books talk about holding your hand on the baby's head to keep it from popping out suddenly. All these things were changing the normal physiology of birth so that the baby can't just come out. So we also don't tell mothers to push, and we don't tell them to stop pushing at the end. And this is where we're seeing these really amazing things with babies, where, you know, Elizabeth Davis and some of the other authors years ago had 7 positional movements they'd identified the baby made. The new volume of Heart and Hands and Anne Fry's books now talk about 14 positional movements. I really think there's like way more than that. Watching these babies, just when you're not touching them and you're not telling the mother push or don't push, you're seeing these babies really wiggle. So that's one thing. We're having less tears, we're having less shoulder dystocia, we're seeing more positional movements of that baby than we ever thought possible. Second of all the good science is pointing to what babies need at birth, and that is that they really need to be colonized by their mother's own microbes. Maybe you've read some of this research on the fact that babies are born sterile, and within 1 hour you can culture millions and millions of bacteria and germs and microbes off of this new baby. So that first hour is incredibly important for the baby setting up its entire immune system for life. And the best person to colonize this baby is the baby's mother. There's nobody else. So when we get away from catching babies, when we stop even thinking like that, we literally think of babies coming out on a clean, soft surface and the mother herself picking them up and her hands being the ones to touch them. And her body, like her chest, her body being the one that baby is against in that first hour of life. That becomes very significant with all this new research that's happening around the baby's microbes. The other thing that we know babies need desperately in the first hour of life is their colostrum. If they don't get the colostrum in the first hour of life, their health will always be subpar. And when we're talking about third world countries, which I know some of you are working in or plan to, we can identify 23% of the deaths we're losing right now in the world of babies could be prevented if they had their colostrum in the first hour. So that golden hour is, you'll never get it back for as far as contact with the mother with the baby. So he needs to be up at her breast. Babies have an incredibly strong urge to suck. And we record when the baby's first nurse. We don't interrupt anything for the birth, so they'll come out and nurse, and they're oftentimes nursing by 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 12 minutes, 9 minutes. It's just very, very common now that they get latched on really fast. So we're pretty excited about all these benefits. I could talk all night, which I won't, but the other thing we noticed is when midwives catch babies, they tend to, well, first thing, their hands are the first ones to touch them, and then they tend to put the babies up on the mother's abdomen. That tends to be the spot. And then from there, it may be a while till the baby gets up to the breast. When mothers are picking up their own babies and no one's telling them what to do, what we're seeing is that 100% of the women will bring the baby straight to their breast. They don't stop and lay it on their stomach. They just bring it to their breast. And then they begin to start helping the baby get in position. And nobody can make the baby suck, but you can definitely make all the right environment, and you can definitely get out of the way and not do anything that will interrupt that time. So we don't try to clean the bed first. We don't try to suture the mother first. We postpone celebration. until two more really, really important things have happened after the birth. One is the birth of the placenta, which is pretty life impacting for the mother, and the other is the baby getting latched onto the colostrum, which has huge benefit for the baby. So if you haven't read the research yet, you're going to get to it on the chapter on breastfeeding, but we have incredible studies on huge numbers of babies in Ghana and Nepal showing how important it is that the babies get to the breast in the first hour, and actually how colostrum is a time substance, and every hour after birth it drops off the immunoglobulins in the milk. So those are some of the reasons why we've started doing hands-off birth. I think we have some really, really good science behind it. I could talk on the subject for a very long time. They've really researched what mothers' brains need in labor, and they need quiet and semi-dark, and they need people not talking so that they can go into their back, more primitive brain, and get out of their neocortex. And they need to feel safe, so they do need a midwife there, but they don't do well with someone observing them. So the culture we have around birth of people standing in front of the mother and staring at her crotch while she's giving birth is not very good. So we position people at her shoulders or behind where we can still see the birth, but she doesn't feel observed. Yeah, so that's some of the culture around birth that we've been working on, and I'm sure people have questions, so I want to give you time for questions. And then I also want to give you time for questions off this topic. But first, let's stick on the topic, and I want to find out if any of you have burning questions that I didn't answer well, or that you think you're completely confused now by what I've just said and you don't know how to implement this. Okay, I see a question by Danielle. Hi, Danielle. It was so great to meet you the other week. No, the colostrum doesn't dilute. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but the amount of immunoglobulins in it, which is the major protective factor of colostrum, it diminishes every hour. So there's only one time it's at its peak, and that is in the first hour after birth. And there's only one time that the baby has a driving instinct to nurse, and that's in that first half hour to an hour. And they say after an hour the baby has to learn. It's a learned response, which babies can learn because they're very smart. But I think it would be safe to say that there's nothing more important you can do at a birth than protect that hour after birth so that nothing interrupts that time when the baby can get the colostrum and the baby wants to find the nipple and suck. Sure, I can send the studies on the breastfeeding. I'd be really happy to if you want to pop me an email. And I don't remember which module it's on. Maybe Kristen, I don't know if you're still there. You can tell me. It might be module 9, but when you get to it, or for those of you that have bought the whole set, you've already got this research because it's in the resources for the chapter on breastfeeding. Yeah, okay, so it is module 9. Kristen just confirmed. So if you have that, you've already got it. If you haven't ordered that far ahead, then just write me an email. I would be thrilled to send it to you. This is not obscure research. This research was published in the American Academy of Pediatrics Journal and the National Institutes of Health. So really major, major journals in the United States. I'd love to share that with you. Okay. Anybody else have questions? You want to type in anything I said confuse you? At times people have, when I describe the style, they say, oh, that sounds like a do-it-yourself birth. And I say, no, 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 you don't understand. It has those elements of privacy like that, but the midwives are always right there with all their, emergency equipment if needed, but we just keep it out of sight behind the mother. And we are standing there silently, but with our brains turned on, 100% ready to catch anything that might go wrong. So it's really, really the best of having a midwife, but not an interfering midwife, but having the safety of what she might need to bring to the birth. But just learning, midwives, I think, really have to learn how to tell the difference between when birth is normal and you can do nothing and when things have become abnormal and you have to do everything. Okay, you don't worry about checking for cords. Excellent question. That is a good thinking midwife's question. I was taught, like everybody else, 34 years ago that you always did certain things. So I want to rewind a little bit farther than the cord and talk about checking things. If you want birth to be incredibly straightforward and easy, and actually start witnessing the fetal ejection reflex, which has been described really well, when the baby just comes out very quickly without really a second stage at all, you have to rewind a little bit farther, and one of the things you have to quit doing that we were all told we had to do was check for dilation at 10 centimeters. So with a woman who's already had a baby, if you've already really empowered her that she's going to listen to the signals in her body, and you're not going to be telling her, when she starts getting that urge to push, you can usually trust that it's really time. And she oftentimes, if you don't interrupt it, so you don't put your hands inside of her, and you've already got everything set up so you're not making any clanging noises, you can just trust that when she feels that sensation, you just let it flow. You don't turn on the lights, you don't make noise, you don't talk, you do not stick your hands inside of her. She will oftentimes just go very quickly toward birth, and very easy birth, and no pushing really at all. Then you get to the point where the head is out. We were all taught to stick our fingers in. Again, we had to feel for cords, and that's completely not true. So I haven't checked for cords in the last, I don't know how many thousands of births. There is just absolutely no need. The cord is going to be around the neck about 1/3 of the time. And now that I can think about it differently and not be afraid of those cords, I realize babies come out with their cords around the neck. They just do. It's extremely rare that a cord ever holds a baby back. So theoretically, if you actually had a shoulder dystocia where you saw the baby's head turtle and, you know, suck back in and turn blue, that would be your very first step of management for shoulder dystocia, would be feeling for a cord. But in all my experience, I've never seen that it's a cord holding back a baby. When the cord is around the neck, the baby will go ahead and come out. And then what we do, because we're watching very carefully, is as the baby emerges, we just tuck the baby's head back toward the mother's crotch so that that lessens the, you know, the pressure on the cord. You don't want the baby to shoot straight out with the cord around the neck and then be strangling there, laying there. So we just gently turn their bodies back so that their heads are now right there at the introitus. It loosens the cord, then unwrap the cord. In most cases, the baby's already crying, and you can let the mother pick it up. So no, you do not have to check for cords. Now, if you're working, again, I just have to clarify, if you're in an apprenticeship with a midwife that's telling you you have to check for cords, you have to do what she says, but just know that, again, we have thousands of women in our database that we have tested this on and never had a cord hold up a birth. So even when we see it starting to appear with the shoulder, we do not try to push it back over the shoulder. We don't try to pull it over the head. We have read that you can cause a lot more damage by doing that. But very good question. Excellent. Okay, anybody else have other questions? Okay, so somebody said, would you say that mothers outside the U.S. would be more likely to want hands off? Okay, that is a very fascinating question that I get a lot. I love that you asked that. No, I don't. What I find is that when we talk to women about what women need, when we explain to them how their brain works and how they really need to be able to go to labor land and not be in their rational frontal neocortex part of their brain, how they have the instincts to give birth, their body is going to be the one telling them what to do, that they're going to feel the sensations that are going to make it feel good to push or not feel good to push. As long as we're listening for heart tones and we know everything's okay so we can reassure them, I think women are very excited to give birth this way, and they love reaching down and picking up their own babies. They love the concept of that they're the ones instead of someone catching their baby. So we have tested this in the United States. I have actually 2 daughter-in-laws that are midwives and a son that's a midwife, and they've all spent time in the United States. Rose and Ian at one point for 3 years supported themselves being midwives in the U.S., and they had a large clientele here that they did births the same way that they do them where we live in the Philippines. So no, I wouldn't say that that is something that is just in other countries at all. But you would have to re-educate people, because there's a very strong culture around birth, and they've all read spiritual midwifery, and they might expect that you're sitting between their legs, you know, rubbing everything. Now, in some of the more current books, because I really read carefully the chapter on this in Elizabeth Davis's new edition of Heart and Hands, she backs way off of what she used to talk about having your hands inside people. She has really moved away from that. And I think a lot of midwives are moving away from it. And I think you'll see that reflected in the population, that they may not be as much wanting all the massage and all the touching. Water birth naturally gives people a nice, you know, warm compress. And I think in water births, you should absolutely have your hands out of the water. Like, don't be putting your hands in there at all at that point. Okay, Clavel, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. If there's cervical lip preventing further progress, absolutely. Okay, so here's the deal. When you don't check people at 10 centimeters, then you have to really be paying attention. And when you stop doing certain things routinely, it makes you smarter as a midwife. You have to be smart, because you have to watch her then and say, is she having that irresistible urge to push that's going to lead to birth very quickly? So if you don't see the baby starting to emerge, or you don't see, like, okay, things are definitely happening where she is having that uncontrollable urge to push, if you see her just kind of really bearing down and you can tell she's really pushing and then nothing's happening for a bit of time, you have to judge whether she's a primip or a multip. If we think, okay, maybe she's not really dilated, maybe she's pushing for some other reason, then we'll go ahead and put on a sterile glove and check her cervix. I mean, there's no law against it. It's just that it's not routine to us anymore. So I hope that makes sense. And then what the research has shown, and I read this years ago, and this is evidence-based, multips, it doesn't matter if they have a cervical lip. They will not tear it and they will not hurt themselves. They might feel an urge to push anywhere after 8 centimeters. And in all the research they did in Europe, they found that when they separated women into very, you know, like they separated them into groups where they told women to push or they told them they can't push based on their cervical dilation, that birth happened in about the same amount of time with no cervical tearing. So women that have to push, that are multips, are going to do it, and you're not going to stop them, and they're not going to tear their cervix. Where you get in trouble is women that have it in their heads they're supposed to push, or they have outside voices telling them to push when maybe someone wasn't sure they were dilated. Yeah, but you rarely run into that. You're going to run into it more with the first-time mother. So with the first-time mother, we still let her push on her own, but if we don't see that there's a baby showing, you know, within, I don't know, I can't give you exact numbers, but you don't want someone pushing really hard without seeing, you know, the top of the head, or check and make sure she's dilated. When you see what I'm talking about, the woman will have irresistible urges to push, and very quickly the baby is coming down where you can see it. That's the fetal ejection reflex, and that's very real. So, cervical lips, again, a lot of books talk about them. Everybody's scared of them. They are a theoretical risk, but in reality, not too common. Okay, great. Thank you. Good question. All right, anyone else have any questions? Or maybe anyone could tell me any of your concerns you have with wanting to do more hands-off birth, but like running into the culture of midwifery in your area or something. I don't know. I've never run into women that didn't want it, really. I've just more run into midwives that thought they had to do it. So it's kind of interesting. All right, well, we have a half hour left, so now is your chance to ask any questions you want to ask about anything. So whatever module you're on, I see we have 13 of us on, so that's great. Whatever module you're on, or whatever are your burning questions about NARM or anything else, the floor is open. I had 2 hands-off births and I tore with both babies. 3rd degree on the last one. Ooh, so if I showed up at your practice, what would you do? Okay, that's really a loaded question, and I have to ask you, well, first of all, I'm not sure if people are describing hands-off birth the way I described it, of not having the woman in stirrups. So she has to be and not on her sitting on her tailbone. These are all really important factors. So she can't be semi-sitting in a bed. She can't be in stirrups. She has to be in some position where her perineum is pretty loose, like kneeling, hands and knees, side lying. Second of all, I have to ask you if anyone was telling you to push, if anyone was doing any caregiver-led pushing. So that would be another question for you. And I'll also tell you an interesting human interest story, is that we had a woman years ago in Alaska that had a 4th degree tear with her first baby. And I mean, those are rare in anywhere. But she had a 4th degree tear. And so it's very alarming when that happens. And there was no good reason for it. I mean, it was her first baby, but other than that. And so her second baby, we were like, oh my gosh, we have to do all these things to keep this poor woman from tearing again. Do you know that that woman got in her car, it was a Volkswagen, drove to our birth center and had her baby in the car. So she had a completely explosive, uncontrolled birth, and she didn't tear at all. So I have to just tell you that I cannot tell you that any of us have a handle on what makes people tear, what they don't. So those are the things I would say to you, Amanda, in India is, you know, what position were you in? Were anyone telling you to push? The verbal cues are pretty big. And then I'll tell you something else. Okay, if you did everything perfectly, I love that you said that. You know what I would think about you possibly? I don't know if you've done our chapter on pelvimetry yet. No, it's toward the way end. If you look in Miles' textbook and you look at, you very, very possibly have a pubic bone that's less than 90 degrees. And I'm just guessing. I don't know you. I've never seen your pelvis. But I'm going to guess, because when women have a history of doing everything right and having those bad tears, oftentimes you don't have a nice 90-degree angle pelvis. And if it's less than 90 degrees, you're still going to get a baby out, but it's got to go somewhere, and it's going to go through the perineum and through the rectum. So look at the picture in Miles' Midwifery, and they have such an incredible picture that shows when you have that nice rounded arch, the round baby's head fits right under your pubic bone. But if you have a narrower arch, it forces the baby down, and it is going to have to go through the rectum and the perineum. So that would be one thing to think about. I don't know, but that would be something. I think over the years I've been a midwife, midwives take way too much credit when women don't tear, and they take way too much blame when they do. And I think a lot of times it's the pelvic types might very well be the thing. Okay, warm compresses on the perineum. You know, warmth it makes sense that it would bring blood to the area and possibly relax things. That's why water birth is wonderful, because you're surrounded by warm compresses. So really, water birth is great. If women really like that and they want to do that, that would be fine. But what I would warn you is to hold them there between contractions, but during contractions, don't hold the baby's head back in any way. So don't hold it tight there while the baby's trying to come toward you. That would be my best advice about that. All right. Yeah, right. Midwives, Amanda said midwives, whatever midwives do, sometimes women are going to tear. That's right. And women do heal from tearing. And I really want to stress the fact that hands-off birth can give me the assurance that I'm not going to get a baby into something it may not heal from, like a shoulder dystocia. I don't want to be the cause of shoulder dystocia, because that is serious, and that can very well be fatal or damaging for life for a baby. Whereas women's perineums are incredibly forgiving. They heal. Many of them heal without stitches. Some of them need stitches, and they heal really, really fast. Okay, let's see this question about where the mom pushed for 2 hours and the doctor says to put. Yeah, okay. Okay, I do want to mention something about that. Now, if that is just because the mom pushed for 2 hours and you decide to intervene, that is appropriate times. But you have to be very clear that you're now not doing a natural birth anymore. When you put your fingers inside of a mother and press down on the floor of the vagina, and you tell her, push here, do this, do that, that is called for sometimes, especially with a first-time mother. But you're not having a natural birth anymore. So just be really clear that you are deciding you're going to intervene. That is intervention, and that's pretty major intervention. So it's okay, because it might save her worse intervention, like going to the hospital and having forceps or something. But But you always want to start with the hands-off birth, and then if you have to move to that, move to it knowing that you're now intervening. I hope that makes sense. And when you do that, you are going to have a lot more tearing because you've got your hands in there pressing down on everything and doing that for, you know, a period of time. Okay, so you witnessed a complete hands-off birth as a doula in October. Nurse and doctor were too late, and it's amazing to see. Life-changing. Oh, awesome. I love to hear that. I like to hear that you thought it was amazing. I know, to me now, I'm very jarred by births where either people are talking to the mother about what to say, or they have their hands all over her genitals when she's giving birth. It just is so strange to me now, because I've changed into doing something different, but I really like it. I do want to also tell someone there's an old movie from the 70s that still exists. I think you can find it on YouTube, or maybe you can buy it. I think it's on YouTube, though. It's called Birth in the Squatting Position, and it shows a whole series of women just at the very end of birth. The movie's only 10 minutes long, and every segment is just a woman the camera goes to her as the baby's head is crowning, and she's squatting, but the most amazing thing of the birth is that no one's hands are on her. And the baby, you can watch the baby's heads come out and do their own rotation, and then you just see these babies slither out. And then in every case, the baby picks up the mother herself. And a lot of times watching that helps people to know what I'm talking about better than anything. Okay, Aisha, thank you. You said it's on YouTube. Good to know, because we don't allow any cameras in our birth room. That's one of the things, well, to protect the dignity of the mothers who that's not their culture. But also, even in America, I would have to advise people to keep the cameras out, just because of what we know of the science of the human brain, and how if the mother feels observed, she's going to slow down her labor. So it's hard to take a picture of what I'm talking about, but yes, it's called Birth in the Squatting Position. And if you watch that, you'll know much more what I'm talking about. And it's obviously medically attended births. They're letting the mother squat, give birth themselves, and pick up their own babies and put them right to the breast. But you can see a gloved hand there in the edge of all the films. And sometimes if the baby rolls on their back, you know, the hand will kind of help the baby roll back over. But very helpful for what we're talking about. Okay, other questions? Oh, how long will you let a mother push before intervening? Okay, well, that's what kind of just takes some practice and experience. Like I said, if I see a mother if she just does little grunts, then I'll just leave her alone. Like, a lot of women do really short little grunts, and then the next thing you know, the baby's, you know, at the perineum. But if a mother is just getting into it where she's really bearing down and pushing hard and prolonged, then I don't want to wait too long with that. If I don't see the head appearing, I'm probably going to put on a sterile glove and feel something, because I might find out she's really not ready to push. So if they're just small little grunts and it's not really super hard pushing, you can just wait. But if she really bears down, you ought to see a head pretty soon. Are you also hands off once the head is born? Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And this is the really exciting time I was talking about, where you see that little baby, even at crowning. I never used to know they wiggled at crowning, but they do. I've seen babies rotate and spin completely around where they were coming out, occiput posterior, and they changed their mind right on the perineum and flipped full crowned to face down. I've also seen babies that were being born head down, but they were not lined up right, and they were wiggling their little heads. And then when they get their heads out, if you're not touching them at all, and remember, these women are not sitting on their butts, so that's a really important thing. A lot of the culture in American home birth is to sit semi-propped on a bed, but that's really a bad position, because you're losing all the space your mobile coccyx could provide, and the baby's face is going to be born into a soft surface. So the mother has to be upright or on her side. Then you're seeing that little baby just wiggle to line up those shoulders, and then just slip out under the pubic bone. It's very great to see. So we never put our hands on the baby with the head out unless we have all the signs, classic signs of shoulder dystocia. So you're really watching. You're not clear across the room. You are watching. Your brain is turned on 100%. If you see the baby turtle turn blue, you're going to put your hands right on it and help it get out. So, great question. All right, anybody else? Any other questions? We have 15 more minutes. Any topic is open, not just this one now. Anything you want to ask about, any of your assignments or anything to do with your NARM paperwork. Somebody was saying earlier they were having a hard time finding things. The NARM.org website is a little hard to navigate. You just have to spend lots of time with it, and so you get really comfortable with it. There, if you dig deep, and it's not set up very good, but if you dig deep, you will find all the forms that you need, and all of them are downloadable and printable from your computer. And you don't want to get very far into any of your internships without, or your preceptorships or apprenticeships without having those papers, so you know exactly what you need and get them signed. Do I need to have my own charts or just copies of the preceptors? Okay, that's a really good question. NARM is starting to ask that they would have access to the charts. If they decide they're going to audit you, then they have a right to ask you to produce the charts with photocopies with the names of the clients didacted, which means blacked out. But you don't need to, as far as I understand, you don't need to keep copies unless you get audited, except of your continuities. I think that's right, but somebody check me on that. And I think nowadays with the continuities, they are asking you to turn them in with your charts, which means that you would need to photocopy the entire chart and then take a black marker and just make one straight line through the name of the mother, the baby, everybody. All right. Okay, another midwife assistant workshop is planned. Yes, Kristen, I want you to pop on here and tell people, I think we were looking at the second week of September, which will be in New York. And yes, we had a wonderful time in New York. Sorry we missed you there. We're thinking of possibly doing one on the West Coast in February and on the East Coast in September. So that is our plan right now. And please be patient with us. I'm writing myself a note so we will get the current dates up on our computer. I try to schedule the next year's calendar in January or February at the latest every year. And our disaster in the Philippines really slowed us down this year, but we're going to get the dates up. So look for probably another midwife assistant workshop in New York with Kristen next September, and then probably one here in Idaho next, February of 2015. So we're going to try to do 2 a year. Okay. How do you look at past questions answered? Yes, the Google group, you can look, once you get on the Google group, the Mercy in Action Distance Google group, you can look up everything that's ever been posted on there, as far as I understand. You just have to know how to get into the right spot on it, and then you can see and we send tons of studies out to that group, so really you could spend a year just reading all the studies we've already sent and all the questions. All right. Okay, so shoulder dystocia, what do you do first? Okay, well, first I don't even call anything a shoulder dystocia unless I've already put my hands on the baby's ears and press down and up. So I go down to try to get the top shoulder, and it either slips right toward me, or I take the head with my hands on the ears and go straight up and get the posterior shoulder out. Many, many, many times that resolves it right there. And that wasn't even really a shoulder dystocia, it was just tight, stuck shoulders. But if that doesn't work, then yes, I go to the Gaskin Maneuver. I really love the Gaskin Maneuver, and when people roll into it, either if they're on their side, it's a pretty easy roll. If they're on the birth stool or squatting, it's just straight forward. That oftentimes, just moving into that position dislodges the shoulder. Plus, in that position, you have lots and lots of room to maneuver. You're not running into a bed or anything in your way. So. All right, so Kristen's writing to us because she is losing her voice from a cold. So yes, we're firming up the dates, but we're looking at possibly the 2nd or 3rd Friday, Saturday of September. Oh, Amanda's coming over from India. Good, you're going to pin us down to a date. That's awesome. All right, we'll work on that really hard. Oh, thank you, Danielle. That's very kind that you highly, highly recommend the workshop. We really enjoyed the one we got to do 2 weeks ago. We loved having you there. Okay, super great. Yeah, we are going to do at least 2 a year because that was fun. I think it'll add a lot of value to the people doing the distance academics and anyone else that's getting started. We try to set it up so it's incredibly practical and so that you have some real skills to take away, and so it makes you also more attractive to someone to take on as a apprentice. Okay, we've got 10 more minutes. The floor is open. What questions would you like to hear? And Kristen or Amanda, if you have anything to add to this discussion on the hands-off birth or anything else we've talked about, feel free to jump in. I'm not the only one, really, truly. A lot of the midwives we've trained and work with are doing this exact same style of birth, although it's not really being written about too much yet. This whole science of the of epigenetics and of the baby's microbes, that's being talked about a lot right now. That's pretty significant. We even I just read a big study. In fact, I think I sent it to the Google group about how babies in NICUs are actually, they can culture microbes off of them that are, instead of looking exactly like their mother or any other human being, they look exactly like the surfaces in the NICU. And that should scare us. Like, that has some major implications. We're meant to be colonized by our mothers and not by surfaces or by strangers. Okay, that's really a good question, Molly. I like the way you think. Do you talk to moms much during hands-off birth or just stay silent? I used to talk way too much at birth because I'm a very nice person, and I would ask people, are you comfortable? Do you want to change position? Do you want a drink of water? I was doing the worst thing possible, didn't even realize it, until I heard all the research on how the human brain works in labor. And it's very critical for the maximum hormone production and the easiest birth, and the best possibility for a fetal ejection reflex is for the mother to be in what we call labor land, for her to be outside of her rational brain. Language wakes up your rational brain, and questions wake it up more than anything. And so when I realized that in all my years in EMS, which is emergency medicine, we were always taught when someone's passing out, you ask them questions. Like, that's how you get people to wake up and come back to consciousness and come back into their frontal neocortex, part of their rational brain. So you want just the opposite in birth. You don't want to talk, but you really don't want to ask questions, because the ways that women come back into their rational brain is with language, with questions, with noise and bright lights, and with eye contact. And again, that goes against so much of what we were taught years ago, where and maybe even some of you that are doulas now, I'd love to hear from you if you're being taught this, to lock eyes with the mother and have her breathe with you. That's great, but it isn't what works best for birth. Now, women still give birth under those conditions where everybody's talking, chattering, making noise, turning on lights, and asking them questions, but they're going to have a second stage where they're going to have to really work at pushing their babies out. You're not going to see those like magical, really, really fast heart, no second stage births where it was just all hormones, just whoosh, the baby comes out. And you're not going to see such a good start to breastfeeding, which is a absolute health and life and death issue. So I quit talking at birth. It was absolutely radical. It was probably the hardest thing to change the culture around birth, where we all just quit talking. And now every time we bring someone else into our birth room or into a home birth we're doing, we have to teach them. And of course, you have to tell the women that you won't be talking ahead of time so they don't think you've suddenly gone mute. What you do is empower them and say, once you get into really active labor, you're going to want to go into labor land, and we're going to let you, and we're not going to call you back, and and your baby's cry will bring you back, and we're just going to be right here with you. So we have water where she can see it, but we don't ask her if she wants to drink and all that. We just try not to ask questions, and we all are really silent. Yeah, good question. I rarely see labor land in hospitals. No, that's true. I have to do eye contact and breathe more. Yeah, women give birth in their frontal neocortex brain all the time, and sometimes we even describe it like that, like she's really in her rational brain, or she's really, being mental about this. It's not ideal, but it happens. It's very hard in a hospital. A lot of times people, even at home or birth center births, are quiet for the whole labor, but once second stage starts, they turn on the lights and get loud. So we just have to learn to do better on that. Okay, so here's a couple doulas talking here, Molly and Clarissa, about your experience. Yeah, it makes so much sense to be quiet. Yeah, we have to rethink culture around birth, and it might be different than what we were trained in. We just have to be really open to that. Does that locking eyes also take them to rational brain? Yes, absolutely. Eye contact. Feeling observed is not good, but eye contact is the worst. That wakes you up. So again, if you've ever worked in emergency medicine or even as a midwife with a fainting mother, everybody goes, look at me. Tell me what day this is. You know, do you know where you are? Like, that's how we wake up people that are trying to go unconscious. And so we just have to think in a normal labor, we want to do the opposite. We don't want to ask them to look at us. We don't want to ask them questions. We just want to let them go back there, because when they go back into that space, that's where the oxytocin is going to be just pumping out. That's where it's going to make birth the easiest. And remember, the easiest birth is the nicest birth, is the safest birth. Great questions. Wow, I like this. Very practical. Okay, 5 more minutes. Anybody? Don't want to cut anyone off that has a question. And did I forget anyone's question? I'm kind of just sliding down as I go. If anybody wants to re-ask something or say something that I missed commenting on, I will comment on that. Is everybody doing okay on modules? Nobody's stuck on anything? Everybody feels good about where you're at? Where is everybody at? Maybe you could type me the module number you're working on. We can kind of get a sense for where you all are. Or maybe some of you are very busy right now and practical going to births. How do I teach my 2-year-old to let me work? Oh, that's a good one. Let's have that as a whole nother topic, hey? We'll do that on another line. I love the quote, your baby's cry will bring you back. Oh yeah, when the mother hears the baby cry, all of her instincts all of her mother instincts are woke up so much better than when we used to catch babies and plop them on her stomach. We found oftentimes it was a little too shocking for her. Yeah, let's have another one about working with young children, because I did it too. I was a midwife student, and then I was a midwife while I was giving birth to my own babies. I would love that as a topic, Amanda in India. Thanks. Okay, module 2, module 7. Oh, exciting. You're getting it sent in this weekend. Good for you, Charlie. Okay, Danielle, you're on module 4. Danielle, are you more excited to work now that you've had the skills workshop? Does it make any of the learning come more to life? Okay, Clarissa, you're on the first one. Okay, just remember, that's the big hump. If you can get over that one, they're all easier. The first one is actually the hardest, and I'm not even making that up. It's got so much about it that it's not tangible, like all that stuff about embryology, and you're going to be much more excited when you get into the ones that are more practical. Oh, well, Molly, you're on 9. Good for you. Excellent. Aisha, you're on 2. Excellent. So you got past that first hump. I love this discussion so much. Oh, good. Thank you, Kim. Okay, Danielle said yes. The workshop helped you get more excited about your work. All right, Terry Lee, hi. Good to see you. Module 3, I'm busy with apprenticeship. Great. And doula clients. Good for you. I love that. So excited for you. All right, I'm on 4, but it's only my second. Okay. And number 5. Okay, no 5. Okay. Well, that's exciting. Good for all of you. Oh, okay. So Molly's on 9 is your first one. Now, that's really great, because that brings me to the point that you can take these out of order if you need to. And we've always told people that, but maybe everyone doesn't realize it. So if you're stuck on something, you know, or you don't want to start with 1, start with 2, start with 3, start with nutrition, start with whatever fascinates you. And Molly's starting with 9 because she's taking care of newborns. Makes total sense. I sometimes feel I'm not being thorough enough. Okay, let me tell you what, Clavel, this is for you. You're writing a book for yourself. When you finish these 20 modules, you are going to have written your own book, and you could print it out and put it in a 3-inch 3-ring binder, and you would have your own midwifery book. So this is for you. So the thoroughness is not for us, it's for you, and that will make, I think, it easier for you to decide how much I want to say on this assignment. You obviously can't rewrite all the textbooks, but you don't need to. You need to read them, digest it, and then put it in your words, in your own language, in your own way of thinking. Illustrate it for yourself. It's absolutely for you. So there's no right or wrong of how thorough. It's just what kind of book you want to write. All right. Well, good. A lot of people said that. You're not sure if you're being thorough enough, but just tell yourself, this is for me. What do I want to learn? What do I want to remember out of all these textbooks I just read? What's the most important thing? And if I'm someday somewhere in the world with only this with me, like I can't take all the textbooks, but I can take my assignments, what's the takeaway message? Okay, I see in my computer says we have 1 more minute. And even though you were a small group, you were incredibly involved, and I really, really enjoyed this. I found that telling my husband about it helped me figure out how to reword it. I love that, Clarissa. You know, I tell people all the time, as soon as you learn something, go teach it to somebody. Even if it's your 2-year-old, your husband, another midwife student, because that will help you cement it and make sense of it so much better, especially if you're a verbal learner instead of just a, you know, maybe the words on the page don't come alive until you speak it. My 5-year-old wants to be Michelle Odant. It makes me happy. Okay, that is really funny. Do you know that my son, who's a midwife, met Michelle Odant when he was 3? And then now at almost 30, he met him again last year, and we took a picture of it, and it was great. Michelle Odant is a wonderful man. He is one of the most intelligent and open-hearted human beings I've ever met. So that is a good thing to aspire to be. Okay, well, it's time, so I'm going to go ahead and say goodnight. I hope this has been helpful to you. Has it been helpful? We're so happy to do these for you once a month, and please write into us and tell us what you would like for a topic next time. But Kristen, if it's good with you, I love going with the idea of just how to carve out the study time when you're also raising a family, because we've done it. I mean, I've lived there. I've been there. I now have grandkids living with me, and I'm still getting my work done with little ones around, but I did all this with kids, both learned, apprentice, did coursework, and then later was a midwife with kids. So maybe we'll call that a good topic. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much, all of you. All right, so next March, we'll let Kristen set the date. Do we have it set already, Kristen, for the next one? Otherwise, we'll be sending out a posting, and we'll get with all of you. And I want everyone to be encouraged, keep up the good work, and know that we're really proud of you. Okay, March 8. Our next one will be March 8, wherever you are in the world. Yeah, the world is short of midwives, guys. Don't forget that. And so even though you feel like you're just one person, you are a very important piece of the puzzle that the world needs. So don't give up. Don't grow weary in well-doing. Just keep on slugging through those studies and the learning. And as I sign off, my last final thing I'll say to you, because I really talked tonight about how I had to change. I had to change based on the evidence of what I was doing. Just never be afraid to be a lifelong learner, and don't ever get stuck in just any dogma, any one way to do things. Stay open. Okay, God bless you and good night. Bye.